Before his name was ever linked with royalty, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi had already built a life that was both complex and quietly impressive. While many people first heard of him through his relationship with Princess Beatrice, those who knew him earlier understood that his story had started long before royal attention arrived. He was not someone shaped by fame, but rather by experience, responsibility, and ambition. His life unfolded in layers: family heritage, personal loss, business success, and fatherhood, all of which played a role in shaping the person he would become. By the time the world began to take notice, Edoardo was already living a life that many would consider remarkable. And yet, he carried it with a level of privacy that made him even more intriguing. Edoardo was born into a background that blended British life with deep Italian aristocratic roots. His family history stretched back generations, tied to a legacy that still held cultural significance in Europe. Growing up with that kind of heritage meant being surrounded by stories of the past, stories of land, tradition, and identity. Yet despite this, his upbringing was not confined to a single narrative. It was shaped by change, adaptation, and a mixture of influences that gave him a broader perspective on the world. This balance between tradition and modern life would later become one of his defining characteristics. His early years were not entirely conventional. After his parents separated, Edoardo's life shifted into a blended family environment. He was raised primarily by his mother, alongside a stepfather who would become a major influence in his life. This period introduced him to a different kind of stability, one not rooted in aristocratic expectation, but in everyday values like discipline, responsibility, and emotional resilience. It was here that he began to develop a grounded outlook, something that would later set him apart from others in similar social circles. His stepfather played a particularly important role, not just as a parental figure, but as someone deeply connected to influential circles in Britain. Through him, Edoardo was exposed to the world of politics, leadership, and public service. He observed how decisions were made and how influence operated behind the scenes. However, instead of being drawn into that world, he seemed to absorb it quietly, taking lessons without necessarily following the same path. This exposure gave him insight but also clarity about what he wanted and what he didn't. A turning point came with the sudden loss of his stepfather. It was an event that deeply affected him, not only emotionally but in the way he viewed life moving forward. Loss at a young age often forces reflection, and in Edoardo's case, it seemed to sharpen his sense of purpose. Those close to him have often suggested that this moment influenced his later decisions, pushing him toward building something meaningful rather than simply relying on inherited identity. It also created a lasting connection to the idea of giving back, something that would later appear in his charitable interests. Education provided structure, but it was his mindset that truly set him apart. While many in his position might have chosen a safe or traditional career, Edoardo showed an early willingness to take risks. He was not content with simply maintaining a legacy; he wanted to create something new. This ambition led him toward the world of property development, an industry known for both its opportunities and its challenges. Entering that space required confidence, resilience, and a clear vision. At a relatively young age, he made the bold decision to start his own company. It was a move that carried uncertainty, especially in a competitive market like London. Yet this step revealed something important about his character. He was not afraid of failure, nor was he dependent on family connections to succeed. Instead, he relied on his own ideas and instincts. Starting from a modest foundation, he began to shape what would eventually become a highly regarded business. That business, Banda, quickly developed a reputation for doing things differently. Rather than focusing solely on construction, Edoardo approached property as a complete experience. He understood that people were not just buying homes, they were investing in a lifestyle. This perspective allowed him to blend architecture, design, and functionality into something more cohesive. It was an approach that resonated with high-end clients, helping the company grow steadily over time. 9. As Banda expanded, so did Edoardo's influence within the property world. His projects began appearing in some of the most sought-after locations, attracting attention from wealthy buyers and investors. However, despite this growing success, he remained relatively low profile. He did not actively seek publicity, preferring to let his work speak for itself. This quiet confidence became a defining trait, one that would later shape how he handled life in the public eye. Financial success came as a natural result of his work, but it was never the sole focus. For Edoardo, the process of building something from the ground up seemed to matter just as much as the outcome. He developed a reputation for attention to detail, ensuring that each project reflected both quality and creativity. This level of involvement set him apart from others in the industry, reinforcing his position as more than just a businessman; he was a creator. While his professional life was evolving, his personal life was also taking shape in meaningful ways. During this time, he entered a serious relationship with an architect whose own career was gaining recognition. Their connection brought together two creative individuals, each with their own vision and ambition. It was a partnership built on shared understanding, at least for a time. The birth of his son marked a significant milestone. Becoming a father introduced a new sense of responsibility, one that extended beyond career and personal ambition. It required balance, patience, and a different kind of commitment. For Eduardo, this experience seemed to deepen his perspective, adding another layer to his already complex life. Although the relationship eventually came to an end, the approach to co-parenting remained strong. Rather than allowing separation to create conflict, both parents chose to focus on stability for their child. This decision reflected maturity and a willingness to prioritize long-term well-being over short-term differences. It also set an example of how modern family structures can function in a healthy and supportive way. By this stage, Eduardo had already lived through experiences that many encounter much later in life. He had built a business, navigated personal loss, and embraced fatherhood. These elements combined to create a sense of depth that was not immediately visible from the outside. To the public, he would later appear as a calm and composed figure, but behind that image was a life shaped by real challenges and decisions. Interestingly, his path had already crossed with Princess Beatrice long before their relationship became public. Their families moved within similar social circles, meaning they were not strangers. These early connections were subtle, almost unnoticed at the time, but they created a foundation that would later become significant. At the time, neither of them seemed to anticipate what the future would hold. They were living separate lives, focused on their own responsibilities and personal journeys. Yet sometimes, the most important connections are the ones that develop quietly in the background, without immediate attention. As Eduardo continued to grow his business and manage his personal life, he remained largely outside the media spotlight. This period of relative privacy allowed him to develop without constant scrutiny, something that would later prove valuable when his life became more public. His ability to maintain that balance between visibility and privacy became one of his strengths. Even as his success grew, he did not allow it to define his entire identity. He remained focused on his work, his family, and the life he was building on his own terms. Looking back, it becomes clear that Eduardo's story was never just about aristocratic heritage or business success. It was about the combination of experiences that shaped him into someone capable of navigating very different worlds. From private life to public attention, he carried a sense of stability that would later become essential. By the time his relationship with Princess Beatrice began to emerge, Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi was already a fully formed individual with a past, a purpose, and a life that stood on its own. This is what made his story so compelling. He was not entering the royal world to find himself. He already knew who he was. By the time Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi and Princess Beatrice began appearing together in public, their relationship had already been quietly developing behind the scenes. Unlike many high-profile romances that begin under intense media attention, theirs grew in a more private and natural way. They had known each other for years through overlapping social circles, long before romance entered the picture. Their families were familiar with one another, moving within similar networks of influence and long-standing connections. Because of this, their bond did not feel sudden or unexpected to those who knew them personally. Instead, it seemed like something that had slowly evolved over time, waiting for the right moment to take shape. At that point in her life, Princess Beatrice was going through a period of transition. The end of a long-term relationship had left her navigating both personal change and public attention. Breakups are rarely easy, but for someone in her position, the experience was magnified by constant media coverage. Rather than immediately stepping back into the spotlight, she chose a more reflective approach. She focused on her work, her personal growth, and the relationships that truly mattered. It was during this quieter phase that her connection with Eduardo began to deepen, offering a sense of stability and understanding. What made their relationship different from the beginning was the foundation it was built on. This was not a sudden meeting or a whirlwind romance. It was a connection rooted in familiarity, shared experiences, and mutual respect. They already understood each other's worlds, the pressures, the expectations, and the complexities that came with them. This allowed their relationship to grow in a way that felt grounded rather than rushed. For Beatrice, who had experienced the challenges of a very public relationship before, this slower and more private development may have felt particularly meaningful. As they began spending more time together, subtle signs of their relationship started to emerge. At first, these were small and easy to overlook: shared appearances at gatherings, quiet moments noticed by those around them. There was no dramatic announcement or immediate confirmation. Instead, the story unfolded gradually, almost as if they were allowing it to become real before letting the world see it. This approach created a sense of authenticity that stood in contrast to the often fast-paced nature of public relationships. The moment their relationship truly entered public awareness came with their first official appearance together. Attending a high-profile event side by side, they stepped into a space where attention was inevitable. For observers, this was the first clear sign that something significant was happening. Eduardo in particular drew attention not through bold gestures but through his calm and composed presence. He appeared comfortable, even under the gaze of cameras and public curiosity. It was a subtle but powerful introduction. Media interest grew quickly after that appearance. Questions began to surface about who Eduardo was and how he fit into the royal narrative. Unlike traditional royal partners, he brought a different kind of story. He was not defined solely by heritage or title, but by his work and personal achievements. This combination made him both intriguing and difficult to categorize. For many, he represented a more modern type of royal connection, someone who existed outside the system yet could still move within it. As the relationship became more visible, the couple began appearing together more frequently. Each appearance seemed to confirm what had already been quietly understood, that this was a serious and committed partnership. They were seen at events, traveling together and spending time with family. These moments, while public, still carried a sense of privacy. There was no attempt to overexpose their relationship or turn it into a spectacle. Instead, they maintained a balance that kept the focus on authenticity. One of the most significant steps in their relationship came when Eduardo was introduced more fully into Beatrice's family life. In royal circles, this kind of inclusion carries weight. It signals acceptance, trust, and long-term intention. For Eduardo, who already had experience navigating influential social environments, the transition appeared natural. He did not seem out of place, nor did he try to change himself to fit expectations. This ability to remain authentic while adapting to a new environment became one of his strengths. Their travels together also played an important role in shaping public perception. Being seen in different settings, away from formal events, offered a glimpse into their dynamic as a couple. Whether walking together in a busy city or attending international gatherings, they appeared relaxed and connected. These moments, though simple, helped build a narrative that felt genuine rather than constructed. As time went on, it became increasingly clear that their relationship was moving towards something more permanent. There was a growing sense of anticipation, both among observers and within their extended circles. Engagement rumors began to circulate, fueled by their consistent appearances and the strength of their connection. Yet, as with everything else in their relationship, the transition to the next stage happened in a way that felt thoughtful rather than rushed. The proposal itself took place in a setting that carried personal meaning. Choosing Italy as the location reflected Eduardo's heritage, adding depth to the moment. It was not just a romantic gesture but one rooted in identity and history. The decision to design the engagement ring himself further emphasized the personal nature of the proposal. Every detail seemed intentional, reflecting the care and thought that defined their relationship. When the engagement was announced, it quickly became a major topic of conversation. For many, it represented a fresh chapter within the royal family, one that blended tradition with modern values. The response was largely positive, with people drawn to the authenticity of their story. Unlike more formal royal narratives, theirs felt relatable, grounded in real experiences rather than idealized expectations. Planning the wedding initially followed a traditional path. Expectations were high, with anticipation building for a ceremony that would likely draw significant attention. Preparations were underway, and there was a sense of excitement surrounding what the event would look like. For Beatrice, it was not just a personal milestone, but also a moment that would be shared in some form with the public. However, as global circumstances began to shift, those plans faced unexpected challenges. What had once seemed certain became uncertain almost overnight. Like many couples around the world, they were forced to reconsider what their wedding would look like. This moment tested not just their plans but their priorities. It required them to decide what truly mattered. Rather than holding onto expectations, they chose to adapt. The decision to move forward with a smaller, more private ceremony reflected a clear understanding of their values. It was not about scale or visibility, it was about commitment. In many ways, this choice brought them closer to the essence of what a wedding represents. The ceremony itself was intimate, attended only by close family members. Despite its size, it carried emotional weight and symbolic meaning. Every detail, from the setting to the atmosphere, reflected a sense of connection and continuity. It was a moment that honored both the past and the future. One of the most meaningful aspects of the wedding was the presence of Eduardo's son. His role in the ceremony highlighted the blended family they were forming. It was a powerful reminder that their marriage was about more than just two individuals. It was about creating a shared life that included all parts of their past. The images released after the wedding captured a sense of quiet happiness. Unlike large royal celebrations, these moments felt personal and understated. They offered a glimpse into a different kind of royal story, one that focused on intimacy rather than spectacle. For many observers, the wedding marked the beginning of a new phase, not just for the couple but for how royal relationships could be understood. It showed that tradition and modernity could coexist, that personal choices could shape even the most public of roles. As they stepped into married life, Princess Beatrice and Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi carried with them a story that had already defied expectations. Their journey from quiet connection to public partnership was not defined by dramatic moments but by steady growth. And in many ways, that made it all the more compelling. After their quiet and deeply personal wedding, Princess Beatrice and Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi entered a new phase of life, one that would define them not just as a couple, but as a family. Unlike traditional royal marriages that immediately transition into highly structured public roles, their journey felt more flexible and modern. They were not bound by the same expectations as senior royals, which allowed them to shape their lifestyle in a way that prioritized both family and individuality. This balance became one of the most defining features of their relationship. Instead of stepping fully into the spotlight, they chose a path that allowed them to exist both within and slightly outside the traditional royal framework. One of the most unique aspects of their life together was the family dynamic they were building. Edoardo was already a father before the marriage, and his son played an important role in their shared life from the very beginning. Rather than treating this as a complication, both Edoardo and Beatrice approached it with openness and care. This created a blended family environment that felt supportive rather than divided. In many ways, it represented a shift from more traditional royal family structures toward something more reflective of modern relationships. Princess Beatrice's role within this dynamic quickly became clear. She embraced her position not just as a partner but as a supportive figure in a child's life. Reports and interviews over time suggested that she approached this responsibility with sincerity and warmth. Instead of drawing boundaries between past and present, the family worked to create a sense of unity. This approach resonated with many observers as it reflected a broader understanding of what family can look like in today's world. The co-parenting relationship between Edoardo and his former partner also remained an important part of this structure. Rather than conflict, there appeared to be cooperation and mutual respect. This allowed their son to grow up with support from multiple sides, something that is often discussed as an ideal but not always achieved. In this case, it became a defining strength of the family dynamic, showing that different relationships could coexist in a healthy way. As they settled into married life, another major milestone arrived: the announcement that Princess Beatrice was expecting their first child together. The news was met with widespread interest, not just because of royal curiosity but because it marked the expansion of a family that already had a unique foundation. For the couple, it represented a continuation of the life they were building, adding another layer to their shared story. The birth of their daughter brought a new sense of joy and responsibility. Parenthood often changes perspectives, and for Beatrice and Edoardo, it strengthened the sense of purpose within their relationship. It was no longer just about partnership, it was about creating a stable and nurturing environment for their children. This shift influenced many of their decisions moving forward, from where they lived to how they balanced their professional commitments. Over time, their home life became more defined. Rather than remaining in central London, they chose a quieter environment that offered privacy and space. This decision reflected their priorities. While they were still connected to royal life, they were equally committed to building a peaceful setting for their family. The countryside offered something that public life often lacks: distance from constant attention. Edoardo continued to focus on his business during this period, maintaining the company he had built long before entering the royal spotlight. Managing a growing enterprise required time, travel, and consistent attention. Yet he appeared to balance these demands with his role as a husband and father. This ability to manage multiple responsibilities became a key part of his identity. Princess Beatrice also maintained her own professional and charitable work. Unlike senior royals, she had the flexibility to pursue a career alongside her public role. This allowed her to develop her own identity outside of royal expectations. Together, they formed a partnership where both individuals continued to grow, rather than one stepping entirely into the other's world. Their family expanded once again with the arrival of another child. This moment reinforced the sense of stability they had been building. With multiple children in the household, their life became busier but also more grounded. The focus shifted further toward everyday moments, routine, care, and shared experiences that define family life. What made their situation particularly interesting was how it blended different elements: royalty, business, and modern family values. It was not a traditional model, nor was it entirely separate from royal expectations. Instead, it existed somewhere in between. This balance allowed them to create something that felt both unique and relatable. Despite their efforts to maintain privacy, public interest in their lives remained constant. Being connected to the royal family inevitably brings attention, and with that attention comes speculation. At times, rumors began to circulate, often focusing on the challenges of balancing demanding careers with family life. These narratives are common for public figures, especially those who do not conform to traditional roles. However, much of this speculation lacked direct evidence. It was often based on assumptions rather than observable reality. Public appearances by the couple frequently told a different story, one of ease, connection, and mutual support. These moments served as reminders that not everything can be understood from the outside. In many ways, their relationship appeared to be built on independence as much as togetherness. Both individuals maintained their own responsibilities, yet remained connected through shared values and priorities. This dynamic may not align with older expectations of royal relationships, but it reflects a more modern understanding of partnership. Their appearances at events offered glimpses into this balance. Whether attending formal gatherings or more relaxed occasions, they often appeared comfortable in each other's presence. These moments, though brief, contributed to the public perception of a stable and grounded relationship. Over time, Eduardo's role within the royal context became more defined, even if unofficial. He was not a working royal in the traditional sense, but his presence was increasingly recognized. His ability to remain composed and consistent helped him navigate this space without becoming overwhelmed by it. At the same time, Princess Beatrice continued to evolve in her role. Her life became a blend of personal responsibility, professional work, and occasional royal duties. This flexibility allowed her to maintain a sense of individuality while still honoring her background. What stands out most about their story is not any single event, but the way they have approached each stage of their life together. From a quiet relationship to a public marriage, from a blended family to growing parenthood, their journey has been shaped by choices rather than expectations. Their story challenges the idea that royal life must follow a fixed pattern. Instead, it shows that even within tradition there is room for adaptation and change. By prioritizing family, privacy, and personal growth, they have created a version of royal life that feels more aligned with the present. Today, Princess Beatrice and Eduardo Mapelli Mozzi continue to build their life in a way that reflects who they are, rather than who they are expected to be. Their story is not defined by headlines or speculation, but by the decisions they make each day. And in that sense, it becomes something more than a royal narrative; it becomes a human one.